Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Bradley Carter was never a man for excess. His pleasure lay in consistency. Every Friday, he'd stop at the same gas station to fill up his car, buy the same diet soda, and listen to the same radio show on his drive home. At 54, this regional manager for a supermarket chain in Frisco, Texas, might not have had an exciting life, but he took pride in the stability he'd built over the years. He'd been married to Vanessa for nearly 3 decades. They had 2 daughters, now grown and living on their own. The empty nest hadn't made them more passionate, but it also didn't seem to have opened the door to anything dark. At least, that's what Bradley believed. Vanessa, at 48, had stopped teaching regular classes at the local public school and now coordinated distance learning educational projects. She spent most of her time at home, sitting in front of her computer, wearing reading glasses and loose t-shirts, usually with a messy bun in her hair. To Bradley, she was still the woman he'd met at 25, standing in line at the movies, smart, witty, loyal. Sometimes he missed the way she used to snuggle closer in bed or the spontaneous laughter that used to bubble up even during household chores. But he figured that was just part of time, of phases, of routine. Love changes, but it stays, he'd repeat in his head like a comforting mantra. That week, an important event was stirring things up behind the scenes at the supermarket chain where Bradley worked. It was the annual employee celebration, a formal dinner at a convention center, complete with awards and tributes. He was looking forward to it, though without high expectations. The real spotlight would be on the executives, but he was also set to receive recognition for his 20 years of service. Nothing flashy, just symbolic. On Thursday night, while watching an old episode of a police procedural, Bradley turned to his wife and said, "Thinking of wearing that green dress to Saturday's dinner? I've always liked you in it." Vanessa gave a half smile. "Oh, that one? I think I donated it to charity last summer. I'd completely forgotten about it." "That's a shame," he replied, turning his eyes back to the TV. On Saturday, he put on the dark gray suit he only wore for formal occasions and, before leaving, once again invited Vanessa to come with him. "It'll be nice. Decent buffet, live music, the VP's silly speech. You should come." She hesitated, making a slight grimace. "Not today, Brad. I really wanted to go with you, but I've had a headache since this morning. Might be my sinuses acting up again. I wouldn't be good company for you today." He kissed her forehead and smiled naturally. "Okay. Take care of yourself." The ballroom was elegant. White tablecloths, amber lighting, and subtle floral arrangements gave the place a refined celebratory feel. Bradley greeted colleagues, exchanged jokes with managers from other branches, and sat down at a table with his Central Region team. It was the night he'd be honored for 20 years with the company, nothing extravagant, but meaningful to him. After dinner came the vice president's speech, which included a few words directed at Bradley, some group photos, and finally, a collective toast. Everything was going smoothly. Near the end of the event, just about time to leave, Jordan, a longtime colleague and trusted friend, approached him holding a phone and wearing a strange expression. "Brad, can I talk to you for a minute?" Bradley noticed the unusual tone. He stood up and followed Jordan to a quieter corner of the room. "What's up?" "You look," he started, but Jordan cut him off. "It's serious. I've had this in my pocket all night, trying to decide whether to show it to you or not. But I think you deserve to know. I just didn't want to ruin your moment." He unlocked his phone and opened a video in his gallery. "My sister Claire went to a party tonight, at that event space by the lake, you know? It was a friend's party. And, she saw something she thought you needed to see. She sent me this video 2 hours ago." Bradley frowned and took the phone. As soon as the video started playing, a cold pain shot through his stomach. It was a different venue, with colorful lighting and loud music in the background. In the video, a woman was dancing pressed close to a man in a light-colored suit. The kind of dancing that left no doubt, clear intimacy, loaded glances, smiles from people who'd known each other long enough to forget everyone else around them. And then he saw it. The sapphire blue dress. The pearl necklace he'd given Vanessa for their last wedding anniversary. And finally, her face. Her smile. Her hand resting on the other man's chest, their bodies spinning to the rhythm of the music as if the outside world didn't exist. Bradley froze. The video lasted less than 30 seconds, but it was enough to shatter everything. Vanessa had said she wasn't feeling well. That she had a headache. That she preferred to rest at home that night. That she wished him good luck and asked him to represent the couple well. And there she was, at another event, with another man, wearing the very same dress she'd sworn she'd returned to the store because it didn't suit her. Bradley handed the phone back with a trembling hand, unable to look up from the floor. Jordan touched his shoulder. "I'm sorry, man. I didn't know if it was my place." Bradley just nodded and managed to say, "Send it to me." His mind scrambled for a logical explanation, some justification. But all he had was the muffled sound of music in the background, smiling faces dancing in ballrooms, and the bitter taste of a lie discovered far too late. She wasn't there. She was somewhere else. With another man. While he celebrated 20 years of loyalty, to a company, and to a marriage. In that moment, Bradley felt something inside him had changed. Forever. He slowly got up from the table, trying not to draw attention. He left without saying goodbye. In the parking lot, the cold night air seemed to punish him. He got into his car, dropped his phone on the passenger seat, and sat there for a few minutes, taking deep breaths. The muffled sound of music from the ballroom reached him like mockery. He started the engine and drove home in silence. When he walked in, the lights were off and the TV was on at low volume. Vanessa was in pajamas, lying on the couch with a bowl of popcorn in her lap, watching some random show. When she saw him, she forced a smile. "You're back already?" "Wow, that was quick." "The party lost its charm," he replied, his voice dry. "Oh. I'm sorry." She yawned and paused the TV. "Want me to make you some tea?" Bradley just shook his head and headed to the bathroom. He stared at his reflection in the mirror for a long time. Then he changed into the cotton t-shirt he slept in and went to the bedroom. He sat on the bed and stayed there, silent, until she came in. Vanessa appeared a few minutes later, turned off the hallway light, and entered the room with soft steps. She lay down beside him, settling under the blanket. Bradley turned his face toward her, his eyes fixed and hard. The silence seemed to fill every corner of the room. Then, in a low, calm voice sharp as a blade, he asked, "Do you love him?" Vanessa froze. The color drained from her face. Her breathing became shallow, and what had been a warm, domestic space turned into a minefield of tension. But the answer, or the lack of one, would come later. The silence after Bradley's question echoed like muffled thunder. Vanessa took seconds to react, but those seconds felt like hours. She tried to laugh, but her voice cracked. "What are you talking about, Brad?" she whispered, adjusting her pillow as if that gesture could hide the tremor in her hands. He didn't look away. Calm on the outside, but boiling inside, he picked up the phone he'd left on the nightstand, opened the video his friend had sent, and turned the screen toward her. Vanessa's eyes widened. Her breathing quickened, almost gasping. She tried to say something, but her throat failed her. All she managed was a murmur. That's not what you think." Bradley laughed, a bitter, disbelieving laugh. "Not what I think?" "Then explain why the necklace I bought you is around that woman's neck. Explain why that dress, the one you swore you returned, is right there on your waist, spinning on the dance floor." She blinked several times, as if searching for a quick escape. "It was a last-minute invitation. I didn't want to worry you. It was just a dance, Brad. Just that. He took a deep breath. His eyes glistened, not with tears, but with contained fury. You let me go alone to an event that mattered to me while you were wrapped around another man, telling me you were home with a headache. Vanessa curled up in bed, hugging her knees like a child. I didn't plan any of this. It was impulse, a mistake. Bradley stood up and walked slowly around the room, almost ceremoniously. He ran a hand through his hair, took a deep breath, and then turned to her with icy resolve. Who is he? She hesitated. Swallowed hard. A colleague from the education project, nothing more than that. Name. Bradley's voice was firm, cutting. Aaron. Aaron Wallace. Bradley stored that name as if it were a piece of evidence. But unlike what Vanessa might have expected, he didn't lie down in silence that night. He stayed seated on the edge of the bed, phone still in hand, the video of her dancing with another man glowing on the screen. Vanessa tried to wrap herself in the blanket, as if the cold truth weren't about to tear everything apart. Are you really going to stay silent? He asked without looking at her. Are you really going to keep looking at me and pretending this didn't happen? She swallowed hard. Brad, please. I want the truth. All of it. Now. He turned, his eyes steady and heavy. If you lie again, you'll walk out that door tonight. Vanessa trembled. She tried to keep her composure, but tears escaped. I never wanted to hurt you. Answer me. He gripped the phone tightly. Did you sleep with him? She hesitated. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Vanessa, his voice dropped lower, but grew more dangerous. Was it just a dance? She shook her head, denying it, but her lips started trembling. Finally, as if guilt broke her resistance, she whispered. It happened more than once. Time seemed to stop. Bradley closed his eyes for a moment, as if trying to erase what he'd just heard. But he didn't run. When? The first time was at the education team retreat in Cedar Rapids. 4 months ago. Bradley nodded, as if he'd expected the blow but still bled inside. So that's it. All this act. The headache, refusing to come to the event, the soft talk over coffee. Vanessa sobbed now. I felt alone. You were always so wrapped up in work. I just wanted to feel something again. It wasn't planned, it just happened. Just happened? He let out a bitter laugh. You know what just happens, Vanessa? A flat tire. A cut on your finger. Betrayal doesn't just happen. You choose it. You chose to betray me. You chose to lie. You chose to sleep with another man while still carrying my last name. She moved closer, kneeling. Forgive me. I'm sorry. I swear. Bradley stood up. Took 2 steps back, as if her touch were poison. There's no room for you in this house anymore. What? Pack your things. First thing tomorrow. And leave. She looked stunned. Brad, please, are you really throwing everything away like this? I didn't throw anything away. You did. When you crossed that line, you burned our whole story. And now you leave with the ashes. Vanessa tried pleading, but he turned his back. He went to the closet, grabbed a pillow and a blanket, and walked to the living room sofa. When he lay down, the only light on was in the hallway, where Vanessa still stood, weeping, like a shadow of the wife she once was. The next morning, the air was thick, suffocating. Vanessa hadn't slept. She sat at the kitchen table like a stranger in her own home. She tried making pancakes, as she used to on calm Sundays, but her hands shook. The smell of batter no longer filled the air with comfort. Bradley appeared with tired eyes, stubble on his face, but a determined look. He sat at the table and looked at the plate she'd set before him. He didn't thank her. Didn't comment. He just raised his eyes. Are you really expecting me to pretend this can be fixed? Vanessa took a deep breath. I don't know what to say. Say you'll leave. His tone was blunt. Spare me the theater. And where will I go? I don't have anyone here, Brad. You should have thought of that before letting another man into your life. She tried to touch his hand, but he pulled his arm away. You don't understand, No. You're the one who doesn't understand. I'm not the kind of man who tolerates disloyalty. I can forgive flaws, crises, even distance. But lies and betrayal? That doesn't live under my roof. Vanessa dropped her fork with a sharp clatter. You're being cruel. Cruel was looking me in the eyes, lying in our bed, and swearing love while your mind was still on another man's body. She didn't reply. Just lowered her head, shrinking under a truth she could no longer avoid. You have until this afternoon, Bradley said, standing up. If you need help with your bags, I can call someone. But I won't touch your things myself. Without another word, he grabbed his car keys and left, leaving behind a silent kitchen, a shattered woman, and a house that would never be the same. Vanessa packed her clothes in silence. Each fold was a scar. Each item felt like it weighed a ton. The blue suitcase that had sat forgotten at the back of the closet now lay open on the bed like a wound, the same bed where, just days earlier, she'd pretended nothing was wrong. Meanwhile, Bradley walked around the neighborhood as if searching for air to breathe. The anger had passed, but what remained was heavier, a kind of moral exhaustion. He wasn't naive. He knew marriages go through tough phases, but nothing justified what she'd done. The betrayal had been deliberate, hidden, sustained by lies. And that was what he couldn't forgive. When he returned home, he found the living room empty and her suitcase ready in the hallway. Vanessa sat on the couch with her hands clasped, looking small in a space that no longer belonged to her. Do you have somewhere to stay? He asked, without sarcasm but without any tenderness either. She nodded. A colleague from school. For a few days. After that. I'll figure it out. Good, he replied plainly. I don't want drama. I just want distance. Vanessa stayed silent. She wanted to say something, but no word seemed to fit the chasm between them. When she stood and picked up her suitcase, her eyes searched his face for any trace of visible regret. But Bradley was cold. Unmoving. When she crossed the threshold, he didn't say goodbye. Neither did she. The only sound marking the end of their cycle was the click of the doorknob falling back into place. 3 days later, the news quietly spread through the school community. Vanessa had requested a leave of absence for personal reasons. The coordinator avoided commenting, but whispers flew low in the hallways. A cleaning staff member mentioned seeing the former teacher leave the principal's office in tears. Another said someone had discovered she'd been involved with an advisor from the education department, a married man known for getting too close. Meanwhile, Bradley kept up his routine. But every corner of the house reminded him of what had broken. Vanessa's bookshelf, the colorful mugs she loved, the faint scent of her perfume still lingering on the sheets. Sometimes he'd stand in front of the fridge, forgetting why he'd opened it. His body functioned. But his mind? It was a locked room. At work, everyone seemed to tiptoe around him. Close colleagues offered outings, grab a beer, watch the game, take a drive, but he declined. Until one gray late afternoon, his younger daughter, Chloe, called from Colorado. Mom called me today, she said, her voice hesitant. Said she left home, that you two fought. Bradley stayed calm. Did she tell you why? She said it was a misunderstanding. That you kicked her out, without explanation. He took a deep breath. For a few seconds, he considered sparing his daughter the truth. But then he realized, lies were what had destroyed everything so far. Chloe, your mother betrayed me. 4 months. With another man. And she tried hiding it while lying in the same bed as me. Silence on the other end. Then a quiet murmur. Dad. I'm so sorry. Me too. But you needed to know. I don't want anyone thinking she was the victim of some outburst of mine. I was clear. I gave her the chance to tell the truth. Chloe thanked him, and before hanging up, said, I love you. And I'll visit soon. That was the first breath Bradley had taken in days. The following week, his lawyer sent him a scanned copy of the post-nuptial agreement they'd signed 2 years earlier, during an innocent birthday toast. Vanessa had signed without reading it. She'd been happy with the surprise dinner and thought the document was just a formal joke between a mature couple. What she didn't know, or ignored, was that the agreement contained a clear clause: in the event of proven infidelity, the guilty spouse would forfeit rights to the house and any shared assets accumulated since the signing. Bradley reviewed everything carefully. The lawyer confirmed it was valid, legal, and enforceable. Do you want to move forward with this? The lawyer asked across the table. Bradley answered without hesitation. I'm not going to destroy her. But I won't let someone who destroyed me walk away with half of what I've spent a lifetime building. A few weeks later, Vanessa showed up at the house to pick up some smaller belongings. She'd hoped Bradley would be out, but he was there, calm, sitting on the porch. I just came to get my things from the studio. Go ahead. But first, I want you to know I've reviewed our agreement. She froze. What? The document you signed, remember? That birthday toast you never paid attention to. Vanessa pressed her lips together. Are you serious? I am. And I've already started the process. You've lost your rights to this house and everything we've accumulated since then. She stepped closer, eyes burning. Is this revenge? This is consequence. I didn't deal you this blow. You dealt it to yourself. Vanessa cried again. But this time, he felt no pity. Just a quiet, cold relief. I won't fight for alimony. I won't try to drag you down in front of the girls. But justice is justice. And this is mine. She nodded, defeated. Picked up her box and left. For the last time. Bradley went inside, closed the door, and leaned his back against the wood. He felt something different. Peace. The pain was still there. But now there was room to rebuild. The lie had walked out the door. The truth, even painful, had cleared the air. And he knew, the worst was already behind him. 3 months had passed since Vanessa last crossed that threshold. The house was quieter, but not empty. It was as if, for the first time in a long while, Bradley could hear his own thoughts without the noise of doubts, lies, or false appearances. He renovated the guest room. Painted the walls himself, chose a new bedspread, replaced the rug. It was a small gesture, but symbolic. He was rebuilding the space where pain once lived. Vanessa, meanwhile, tried to start over. She stayed a few weeks at a colleague's house until she managed to rent a small one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Frisco. She tried returning to work at the education department but learned that Aaron Wallace, the lover, had requested a transfer to another district once rumors gained traction. Alone and with her reputation tarnished, she had to take an unpaid leave and, with no other options, began giving private lessons to students struggling academically. She tried moving forward, but the image of Bradley's look on the day of her confession still haunted her. It wasn't a look of anger. It was one of absolute disappointment. That hurt the most. Aaron never called again. He blocked her number and vanished from social media. The man who'd promised adventure and freedom couldn't handle the first sign of consequence. Vanessa was left alone to deal with the wreckage of the choice she'd made. And though she denied it to others, deep down she knew, she hadn't loved Aaron. She just wanted to escape herself. Bradley, on the other hand, decided to do something he'd been putting off for years, turn his old dream of buying a small rural property into reality. Nothing far from town, just enough to hear crickets at night and the wind in the morning. He'd always liked gardening but never had time to take it seriously. He found a modest plot with an old greenhouse and an abandoned shed. On weekends, he'd go alone to clean, paint, and reconnect with a kind of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. One Saturday, while kneeling in the dirt planting tomatoes, he got an unexpected visitor, his older daughter, Rebecca. She held her young son in her arms and carried a still warm banana bread in her hands. "I came to see if my dad still remembers how to talk while looking someone in the eye," she teased, with that smile she'd inherited from him. Bradley hugged her tightly. It was the first genuine hug he'd given since everything fell apart. "Is this place yours now?" she asked, looking around. "For now. But I'm already starting to feel like part of it. You seem lighter. More at peace." She touched his arm. "Was it the right decision?" He nodded. "It wasn't easy. But it was the only one that gave me back my dignity." Rebecca stayed for hours. While her son chased butterflies, father and daughter talked about everything: childhood, regrets, the future. They barely mentioned Vanessa. And that felt freeing. On a rainy afternoon, Vanessa decided to write a letter. She didn't expect a reply. Didn't ask for forgiveness. She just wanted Bradley to know she'd finally understood, too late, what she'd lost. The letter arrived and signed, in a plain brown envelope, with shaky handwriting. "Brad. I don't expect you to read this, but I need to write to you. When I found myself outside that house, I thought the worst part was the loneliness. But I've realized the real punishment is the silence of someone who knew you inside and gave up on you. I didn't betray you from lack of love, but from lack of respect, for myself and for you. I wanted to start over with you, but I've had to start over alone, and I understand that's the price. I hope many good things bloom in your new life, even if I'm no longer part of it. Vanessa." Bradley read the letter with steady hands. He folded it and placed it in the bottom drawer of an old dresser. He never replied. And he didn't need to. Sometimes, silence is the full stop the truth requires. 6 months after the separation, the rural property had turned into a promising small business. Bradley started selling fresh produce to local restaurants, and soon neighbors began seeking out his goods. Gradually, he set up a small Saturday market with other local growers, and the old shed became a community gathering spot, simple, but full of life. It was then he made a decision he'd been quietly nurturing. He resigned from the position he'd held for over 2 decades. He left behind the bright aisles of the supermarket chain and fully embraced his new routine, now with his hands in the soil, smelling the morning grass, and watching his own sweat turn into food for other families. The man who'd spent so long surrounded by targets and spreadsheets now harvested lettuce and tomatoes and chatted with customers by name. And more importantly, he relearned how to trust people. One of those Saturdays, he met Helen, a quiet widow who sold homemade jams in jars with colorful lids and handwritten labels. They started by exchanging recipes, then began having lunch together right there, under the shade of a walnut tree at the back of the property. No rush. No expectations. Just 2 wounded people respecting each other's healing time. Time moved on. The daughters kept in touch with their mother, but always with a different tone. They loved her, but now they knew her flaw. And they'd learned, from their father, what it means to have boundaries and dignity. Bradley never sought revenge. He sought justice. And he found peace. The clearest lesson he now carried was as clear as the country sky: there are pains you don't choose to feel, but there are lives you can choose to rebuild. And in the end, that was enough. Because true victory isn't making the other person suffer, it's looking in the mirror and recognizing who you've become after the storm. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.